The FujiCast is an independent Loading Zone production.
Kev, with all your experience of talking on stage, have you been invited to the COP26?
No. However,
no?
I would like to go. I'd like to stand next to Greta Thunberg and kick them all in the...
Look, we've had to engage the bleep machine already. I'm a Greta Thunberg fan, as you well know.
Yeah.
But this time I'm thinking... I saw the video of her the other day. This is going back about a week now, isn't it? Of course, but where she was outside the front, sort of shouting, you know, that their leaders are not going to do anything. It's all over. It's pointless. We're the only ones that can do anything. And I was thinking, I think at this point we need to try and help each other rather than shout at each other.
Yeah.
And
that's
you know,
true.
when she stands cheek by jowl with David Attenborough, of course, they share a common purpose, common goal. But David Attenborough, of course, he's been invited, sure, but David Attenborough is at COP, and he will listen and he will talk and there'll be a sort of very guided, assured way that he tries to talk and get his point across. Now, I'm just wondering whether we're going too far down the shouty road now.
Yeah, I get that point. And actually, I'm more of a fan of her principles in terms of that stuff. I mean, she wouldn't... she defended the people who are lying on the streets in motorways and all that kind of stuff, didn't she? I think, or not necessarily defended, but wouldn't say it was a bad thing. No. And you know, everybody has their own opinions, don't they? So, I don't think lying on the motorways is the right thing to do, because everybody just sits there with their engines revving, waiting for you to move. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we can't just leave it up to the politicians, can we? Because they're all a bunch of, you know. So some people, other people, real people, have to do stuff.
Well, I have to place some faith in the politicians, because they, of course, do wield some incredible power, and so at some stage we've got to have some faith, haven't we, Kev?
No, my faith in politics went a long time.
Well, no, we got. I mean, faith is. I'm not suggesting we're blind. What's that amazing phrase out of Miracle on 34th Street? So it is all a bit Hollywood. If you
I do have more trust in Father Christmas.
if you can't, that's right. If you can't accept anything on faith, then you're doomed for a life dominated by doubt. I love that expression. But it does play into the real world as well, because at some stage you've got to have faith in people that they've woken up and think, it probably is time to do something now.
Well, what was it? Didn't they used 36 aeroplanes, 24 helicopters? Biden's motorcade was 18 cars. Yes. You know, it's not really. There's not a lot of faith there, is there? Come on, let's be honest.
Yeah, I think
get on the train. Like the Queen gets on the train.
Oh, there's the Queen does use the train.
What's wrong with that?
How did Greta Thunberg come? Did she swim?
The FujiCast. She came on a train.
Did she?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, yeah, and actually she does. Her morals are fairly, are absolutely strict, aren't they? I know we spoke across a jingle there, never mind. Are absolutely strict, aren't they, in terms of when she goes somewhere, she goes by boat, and if she can, under power of sail. Isn't that right? I saw something where she was travelling back from America in November, which is the worst time of the world to go, the year to go across the Atlantic, isn't it? I would have thought.
It wouldn't surprise me if she does that. And you know, you can't all do that. You know, the world can't run on steam alone. But yeah,
well,
taken.
You're not going to the COP. There's no Mullins speech at the COP.
No. I'm going to the Millennium Stadium instead.
Oh, rugby. Yeah. Now, will rugby have gone by the time this show goes out? Will you be a happy Mullins or an unhappy Mullins?
No, because it's this coming Saturday.
Well, that's right. But if it's this coming Saturday, it's the Saturday before.
No, I'm saying that as if we're speaking next Monday.
Oh, right. Oh, we've actually... usually we're in the wrong time paradigm. But, who I was going to say, who are we playing? But I'm not Welsh, but I'm supporting you here. Who are we playing?
Wales, Australia.
Well, there we go. So, welcome to the cast, you and your questions from our electronic mailbag, and of course also through the FujiCast private Facebook group that you're very welcome to become a part of. If you want to send a mail through as well, then you can send it to click@fujicast.co.uk. I haven't said this for a couple of weeks, but if you're not a Fujifilm shooter, don't worry. It's a big community. Whatever flavour you shoot, you're very, very welcome. Kev's book of the week is coming up. What have you selected this week, Kev?
Oh, I got a brilliant book this week. I have got Jim Marshall, Show Me the Picture.
Show me the money. Show me the picture.
Show me the picture, yeah. You know Jim Marshall, right? Music photographer.
Oh, yeah. I know. Yes, I do. Yes.
He's the one who took that iconic staged picture of Johnny Cash.
That's right. The one with the finger up. We've talked about that shot before, haven't we?
Yeah,
wasn't there something about that picture that wasn't quite real? Or?
Yeah. Most people think it was taken during the concert. Yeah. And it was a capture, but it wasn't. It was taken during the rehearsal, and Jim Marshall had asked him to, what do you think about me or something? I can't remember the story behind it. But anyway, it was a stage picture. Yeah. But anyway, nevertheless, yes, it's a wonderful book and I love his work.
I mean, that's precious to you and always, isn't it, for the country music? How is the country music show going, by the way?
Good, all right. Last week, I wasn't here. I was doing a workshop. I'm speaking again as if I'm talking next Monday now.
It's confusing, I know.
Somebody would have stepped in for me. But yes, still good fun. Yeah, loving it. Very much enjoying it. I'm going to get myself a country hat and some Stetsons, I think.
Well, nobody can see it, Kev. It's on the radio. It doesn't matter.
I know, but it'll make me feel better.
Okay. Yeah. You'd be like the officer in Stranger Things who never leaves his hat behind. Even when he's being half eaten by aliens, he grabs for his hat. The power of a Stetson. And our guest this week is Darren Goldstein, who you spoke to.
Yeah, who's a very, very well-established stills, film units, TV, music photographer.
Yeah.
From Canada.
With a list of... it's like a who's who, the list of people he's shot, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, questions. Let's pile into your questions. Is it yours, or do you want to go first, or is it me?
You go first, because I'm still editing a wedding right now, and I totally forgot to bring up Facebook.
Oh, no. Nice that you're with us, Kev. Right.
I can multitask.
Yeah, well, good for you. Quinn White, who is an assistant professor. Oh, stand by, Kev. This is going to be a CQ, a clever question. Hi, Kev. Hi, Neil. Oh, no, hi, Kevin. A professor wouldn't say Kev. I can't tell you how helpful and encouraging the show has been. Yada, yada. But seriously, I'm grateful to have found it. I'm writing with a technical question. Maybe it's too soon to be able to answer it, but either way, I am confused. You can't be confused. You're an assistant professor in the philosophy department of the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. How can you possibly be confused?
It'll be cold there.
Pardon?
It's going to be cold there.
It will be, yeah. Oh, yes. I gather that the new primes, the 18, the 23, the 33, the rumoured 56, are all designed to be future-proofed for the new higher-res sensor announced at the summit. So this was about a month ago. So the 56 is not rumoured anymore, is it?
I don't think they announced a new sensor or a new 56, as far as I'm aware. I think they implied that new things might come, but I might be wrong. I didn't watch the whole thing, so. But yes, I would very much doubt that we're going to be sticking to 26 megapixels in the next range of sensors. But who knows?
He said, but I haven't been able to figure out what the deal is with the zooms. Is the 70 to 300 going to be better than the 55 to 200? Was the 1024 already detailed enough, given that the new weather-resistant one has the old optical formula? What about the red badge zooms? Not sure when, if ever. I want more megapixels than I already have, but it'd be great to better understand the long-term longevity of the lineup. And right now, it's all a bit confusing. Gratefully, Quinn. It might be confusing to you as well, Kev.
It is. I read that question when it came through, and I thought it was a really good question, of which I have no answer, I'm afraid. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'm using the 18mm now, the new 18mm f1.4.
Which you love.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And it's noticeably sharper, I'd say. The new 23 1.4 that I tested as well a couple of months back, that also is noticeably sharper. And I can only attribute that to it being ready for larger sensors. So who knows what that means for the zooms. Basically, I haven't got a Scooby.
Well, it was nice to be sent my, here it is, my XT5 in a box, just to try out for it.
Does it say secret? Secret on the top?
Oh, God, yes, it does. I'll edit that bit out. But, yeah, thank you, Quinn. No, we can't really answer that one. But people with much longer foreheads than us might well be able to in the near future. Right, have you got your Facebook working now, Kev?
Oh, yes. So I am still I'm doing some black and white edits. But yes, I do have Facebook open at the same time.
Whose wedding are you editing, or shouldn't you say?
I'm editing.
Don't say, Kev, don't. Because if they listen, they're gonna think, oh, that's charming. We get all the attention from Kev during the show. He was editing
I'm doing the finer details. I've pretty much finished it. Okay, so questions from the Facebook group. As tradition dictates, I will start with the most recent one, which was 21 hours ago with the word edited next to it. I always like seeing that. That makes me think, they've changed their mind. Yeah. Anyway, this is from Gus Bately, and he says, QQ, would either of you consider using any of the Viltrox lenses for professional work? I have the 85mm and think it's okay, but not brilliant. And I'm awaiting delivery of the 56 1.4, 23 1.4, which I purchased on the back Rave Reviews.
Right.
On the back of Rave Reviews, I would imagine that's meant to say.
Yeah.
Auntie Nancy says sends her regards.
I can't remember, Kev. Is Auntie Nancy the one that's still with us?
Auntie Nancy is definitely still with us.
Two knocks for yes.
I think Gus is the, if I remember rightly,
bus
I'm
driver,
getting this
slightly
wrong, is the bus driver down there. Yeah. So, I got the Viltrox 85mm, and I recently started taking it to weddings, but I haven't used it, but I've taken it just in case I find myself in a, one of those kind of reception rooms where it's packed and you can't move around during the speeches. But my 56 1.2 has been sufficient so far. I don't think I'd have any problems using it. I have to say, I quite like it. It makes fine pictures. So I would use it. I don't have any of the others though. The reason I have the 85mm is because there's no real, the 90mm, the Fujifilm 90mm is similar focal length, but it's that little bit bigger, and the Viltrox one was cheaper. So I don't use that range very often, so that's why I've got that. But I typically stay with the Fujifilm branded stuff, but plenty of people are using the Viltrox ones and seem to be happy with them.
At the other end of the scale, it's not Viltrox. I'm very happy with the Samyang 12mm. I think that's a fantastic lens.
Yeah, but don't forget the Viltrox ones now are AF.
Yes.
The Samyang ones were...
No, not at all.
Manual focus, yeah.
Everything is manual. Do you feel is there a slight air of you're not wearing the right team jersey when you're sporting a Viltrox lens?
No, not really. I don't really think that. But ultimately, you've got to do what you can afford, and B, what works for you. I generally believe that third-party lenses are not as good as the official branded ones, and that's true for when I shop my Canon stuff as well. I didn't really use Sigma lenses. I had a couple. I think I had their macro lens or something, but I'm generally of the opinion, whether I'm right or wrong, I have no idea, but I'm generally of the opinion that the home branded lenses are probably going to be better. And so I kind of stick with that mentality.
Sharon Powell-Gill has written in, "Hi both, I'm a long-time listener from the very, very first show." Blimey. That was 1842, before they even invented podcasts. Do you remember the first show, Kev?
Vaguely.
Do you know, sometime we should rerun that, shouldn't we? I suppose you could just go back and find it, but we should
start putting clips in.
Clips in, because it was very different. It was tidy, as you would say, in Wales, but it was a bit disorganised in places. I think both of us were feeling our way in the dark a bit, weren't we? Although I do feel you should both be officially recognised for the daily lockdown shows, which cheered everybody up. The show is a true highlight for me with the banter, the interviews, and I especially love the book review section. So there we go. This is all about books, Kev. I've just returned from the Bristol Photo Book Festival. I didn't realise there was a photo book festival in Bristol.
There was. And Martin Parr was the Martin Parr Foundation was part sponsor of it.
That completely passed me by. I would love to have gone to that. Anyway, Sharon Powell picked up some photo books, 2 Martin Parrs, a Matt Stewart, Josh Edgoose, Paolo Franchi. Have you got any of Paolo's work or Josh's?
I don't think I have any. I know of them, but I don't think I have any of their books.
Yeah. Well, you won't now, because Sharon Powell's bought everything up. There's nothing left.
Let me tell you, just call him Pal.
Pal.
That's Pal. That's what he likes.
I know
him. I know him quite well. Yeah, he's a really nice chap.
All right, Pal.
Let's call him Pal.
Rewind. Pal says, "I was lucky enough to get some books signed by the photographers attending. My question is that in terms of future value, are books worth more if they contain only a signature rather than the additional inscription which mentions your name and perhaps adds a message to, e.g., to Kev, have you been to Australia?" Well, I would imagine straight away. Pal does say, "My own preference is that I'd rather have a book with a personalised message, as I don't intend to cash in on any increase in the value of the book, but I do realise that there are other factors involved as well, such as first edition." Obviously, it must be worth more if it doesn't have, to Kev, have you been to Australia, written in the front, mustn't it? I mean,
this reminds me of when I used to sell. I used to have a business selling rugby memorabilia.
Yeah.
And I used to go to book signings all the time and buy like 5 books. And I remember going to it was Barry John, and he was at London Welsh Rugby Club, and he wasn't a book signing as such, but he was there, and so I brought 5 books that I bought, and I said to him, "Can you sign these for me, Barry?" And he said, yeah. And we already knew, like we'd been chatting. I think there'd been a lunch or anything. So he knew my name was Kevin. And so he signed them all to Kevin. To Kevin, lots of love, Barry John or whatever it was. Or, you kick the ball on, whatever it was. I can't remember. And I was like, yeah, thanks, Barry. That's not really what I wanted. I wanted to sell them. But yeah, so that aside, I mean, I'm not sure if it's a book that becomes super rare, right? And the photo books can become super rare, but usually over a very long period of time. They do fluctuate in value quite dramatically, however, based on just supply and demand. For example, if I go to an Oxfam bookstore and I find a book, and any book, and I open it up, and there's an inscription at the front that says something like, to Johnny, good luck with your A-levels, lots of love, Auntie Maud, and it's in the Oxfam bookshop. That makes me so sad.
Why?
Because I think, what's happened to Johnny?
Maybe
and why
Johnny didn't want the book anymore. He just thought.
Well, I know, but that makes me even sadder that somebody's taken the time and effort to buy this thing, given it to little Johnny, and then little Johnny's decided that. Well, maybe even Johnny's moved off this mortal coil. I don't. It always makes me but always makes me a bit sad. That.
Well, have you checked to see if Johnny's okay?
I did ring him. Yeah, he didn't answer. No.
What did Auntie Maud say?
Well, I looked her up in the phone book, and I rang 4 Auntie Mauds.
None of them were the right. None of them
knew Johnny. Yeah, none of them knew Johnny. One of them said they used to know a Johnny, but they can't find him anymore.
I was talking to somebody the other day who was talking about an old person that they know. This sounds terribly disrespectful. It's not supposed to be. Who just, when somebody has passed in her life, in her little black telephone book, because old people still have telephone books that they write in, of course, she just crosses it out like a real sort of a purposeful cross and writes dead. That's it. It just tickled me that if you look through the book, there are now way more people with dead written next to them than you'd otherwise hope to find.
Every time I speak to my mum, if my mum ever starts a conversation with, "Do you remember?"
Oh, no.
I always know that whoever she's about to say has died.
No.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is a lovely conversation. We're supposed to be talking about second-hand books, but you are right. That if you have a name in it that's not yours, I do like that story, by the way, of those rugby books. Yeah. I suppose you had to find a lot of people, rugby fans, that were called Kevin. You'd be all right, wouldn't you? I
also remember a time I was in what's it called? What's that prison in San Francisco? Alcatraz.
Alcatraz, yeah.
And they had a guy there called Leon Whitey, and he was an ex-con, and he turned into, and he was a bad man, like murderer and stuff. And he turned into an author. He wrote his biography, and he happened to be there the day that I went to visit. I love Alcatraz. I've been 4 times, and anyway, he was there this one time, and he was signing books, and even though he was in his 70s, I think he's passed away now. He's got dead written next to his name in his book. I went up to him and I was like, "Oh yeah, can you sign this?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure. What's your name?" And I said, "Kevin." And he wrote Frank in it. He obviously either totally misheard me or just was thinking of the previous person or whatever. And I opened it up and it said, to Frank, stay good, Leon Whitey or whatever his name, Whitey Thompson. And I thought, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to bother asking him to do another one.
Well, that's similar to a story at Graceland. When I went to Graceland, there was a guy there who was signing stuff for people, Vesta Presley. And I thought, well, I've never heard of Vesta Presley, and apparently he was the uncle. So we all queued up and got. Do you know, I've never checked whether Vesta Presley was actually Elvis Presley's uncle, or whether he was just a janitor that day that thought, I'll sign stuff for people. Let me just look him up. Vesta Presley. Vesta Presley was born in Fulton, Mississippi. He's the brother of Elvis's father, Vernon Presley.
Yeah.
Vesta was married to Gladys Presley's sister.
There's a picture of his signature in a book.
Yeah, and there's me getting something signed next to him. So isn't that funny, those sort of things? But have you got a lot of your books will be signed to Kev, won't they?
Some of them are, yeah. But yes, I mean, honestly, I don't buy these books as an investment, so it doesn't really affect me. But I think generally, for a serious collector, probably having an inscription is going to bring the value down a little bit.
Could you ever sell your books, Kev?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Everything's sellable. Absolutely.
Is there one book you would keep, though?
No, not for the right price.
Well, at least you're honest. I thought for a minute you were going to give us a lovely romantic story about the ex, whatever that book would be. But
no. So Family Love by Darcy Padilla is probably my favourite one. And that's actually, because I've got the French first edition, that's actually worth quite a few bob. Yeah. So that would be the one that I'd be least likely to part with. But not if somebody gave me enough money for it. Quite happily, yeah.
In terms of books, before we go to another Facebook question, you've got lots of Salgado books. I know, I've got a few myself. The Amazonia exhibition is on at the moment. Mm-hmm. Peter Foote wrote to us to tell us about this one. It's on until March 20th. So if you're in Londinium, then it's at the Science Museum. I do like the Science Museum. Southwest 7, Sebastião Salgado. It's called Amazonia. Peter said it might be worth a mention on your show, and it certainly is. And I don't know if you know much about the exhibition, but it's got a soundtrack in the background, which is Jean-Michel Jarre and various other sounds of the forests and stuff. So it's a real immersive experience.
This is the second round of that, isn't it? Because I've been to it when I was there before. It was at the Natural History Museum years ago, a few years back.
So it's come back round again then?
Yeah. I remember going with Peter Pryor to that.
Okay. Right, questions from Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
I think we've got time for one more from Facebook.
Next one. So this is from Steve, Steve the moderator. Question for the show.
Is he allowed to do questions? Because he has a hotline to you. There's a red phone next to your bed.
He is, but there's no need, Steve, in the thread for questions for the show to write question for the show. That's obvious. That's for the same reason you should not start a letter with "I am writing this letter," because that is obvious.
Yes.
However, sorry, Steve. He goes on to say there seems to be a lot of misunderstanding and urban myths regarding licenses required to video a wedding ceremony in the UK, at least from vicars. What's your understanding of the requirements, if any?
It's not required, and if they use the music thing as an excuse, you simply observe the fact that it is copyright. Some of it is, some of it isn't. That there's a whole grey area. You just observe it by not including the music in the final film, or you say, look, I'm not recording during the hymns. The rest of it is fine. And the idea that parts of the Bible, which I have heard used by one vicar, are copyright, well, whilst that broadly could be true in terms of some publishing and so on and so forth, it seems a bit overzealous to me. Don't you think, Kev?
Yeah, my understanding has always been about the music. You can't record like music if it's coming from if they're playing, I don't know, canon in D major coming down, D minor coming down the aisle or something.
You're right with Pachelbel, because you can get that everywhere.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, that's always been my understanding, but I don't know. I don't film, so I don't really know anything about that.
I think there are a lot of myths like that are used by people, aren't there? You can't photograph what it used to be anyway, because it's not the same now, but you can't photograph the register in the UK, this is, because it shows details of other past couples, but that's nonsense, because you can go into any single register office anywhere and demand to see the registers.
Yeah, I think there is merit. I think there is some truth in that, though, I have to say, because I did have a very long conversation with the registrar about it at one point. Yeah. And she was saying that, yes, but that you would be going to the registry office for a reason, looking for information about something for a particular thing. Yeah. Whereas if that was just on your website, and it does have things like mother's maiden name, you see, this is the problem. So a lot of people use mother's maiden name as their bank passwords and all that kind of stuff. So there is merit, there is truth in that about the register. I don't think it's necessarily illegal to photograph it, But that was the reason why a lot of registrars said no.
Well, you tried telling people that you're not going to get anything in focus when you're using a 56 mil from across the way, and really you're focusing on somebody's eyes as they're writing.
I know that, but this world we live in, it's ridiculous, isn't it? It's partly ridiculous. The whole thing about taking pictures of strangers and all that kind of stuff. It's exactly the same thing. It's complete can of worms. But as far as videos and music and all that kind of stuff is concerned, I mean, the thing is, the fact of the matter is that if you did film a church service and you did record the music and it was recorded music coming out of like an iPod or something, they still do iPods.
Do they still do mini disc players, Grandad?
Anyway, if you then stuck that on YouTube, you would get a copyright strike. So, you have to, there's definitely a truth in it. Whether that means that the vicar can charge you for a license, and how do you prove that you've got that license, whatever. Don't know. I really don't know.
I've always thought the licensing thing is a bag of nonsense. And whenever I've been in making a photo film and I put a microphone on a groom's jacket to record audio, not once has somebody said to me, do you have a license for that? I've always thought it's a way of making money out of videographers. Now, I could be wrong here, and we do have James, of course, our resident churchman that can probably correct me on that, but I've always thought it's a bag of nonsense.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not doing well today. I don't know the answer to any of the questions today. Should I just go on?
Well, no, Kev, let me help you, because I'm allowed to answer a few now and then. It's a bag of nonsense.
There we go.
I could be wrong, of course. I probably am. Have we got time for another, or should we? Let's go to the guest this week. So, how do you know our photographer today?
Well, he popped up in the FujiCast Facebook group, threw up a whole load of pictures, said I'm taking these things with GFX, and there was a lot of comments on there. Basically, essentially just went wow. Oh. So I thought, yeah, we'll have a bit of that.
What a job, though. I mean, the list of people, and you're going to get to it, of course, in the conversation here, but the list of people he's spoken to. What a job, Kev. Yeah. This is the job that you want, isn't it?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about stills and behind the scenes. There's a lot of kind of PR shots and everything. Yeah. He absolutely does them amazingly well, and it's a good business. But I would be personally, I'm more interested in the behind the scenes, the nitty gritty, catching the actors, having a cheeky cigarette behind the bus, all that kind of stuff.
Well, of course, he does plenty of that type of photography too within his work. So to use a famous movie line and rewrite just slightly, answers in an email, please, if you can identify the movie. Here's what happened when Kevin met Darren.
So Darren is a set photographer, TV stills, films, all of that kind of stuff, I think. Is that how would you describe your style, Darren?
Yeah, the technical term is a unit stills photographer.
And how does that manifest itself in terms of, for those of you that haven't seen those pictures yet, and we will obviously direct them to your website and everything in the show notes, how does that manifest itself in terms of what your job is, if you like?
It's comprised of three main aspects of the job. So the most common one I would say is unit photography. And what that means is they would have a stills photographer embedded with the team that's shooting scenes for whatever TV show or production that's happening. And you're essentially just a fly on the wall. You're kind of beside the cameras or trying to squeeze in any kind of corner of a room you can get to take photos that'll be used for publicity. So that's the first aspect of the job. The second one would be what they call a gallery photographer, or I think sometimes it's referred to as a special photographer, which is more of a studio shoot. It's kind of dedicated to stills only. You have lighting. The whole purpose of the shoot is for stills, as opposed to the unit photography, which is just a small cog in the machine, if you will. Mm-hmm. So those gallery shoots, those are more studio shoots. Are usually it's more controlled. There's more time given to the stills photographer, and those are also used usually for key art, which is going to be the main poster that's going to be on a billboard or a bus stop or a cover of something, or a profile photo. And then the last aspect, which is a really interesting one, is props or art department photos. And those are usually you're brought in to do a wide variety of things. And if you see a scene in a TV show, for example, and someone's holding a photograph, an old photograph of two people standing there, well, that photograph had to have been taken by a union photographer. So a lot of times you'll get called in to do like a day's worth of photos that they're going to be using for various reasons. So if a picture is in the background hanging on a wall, that's like a family photo of the family of the actors, then that has to be taken by someone like myself. So those are really interesting shoots because they can cover a wide variety of things that you're going to be photographing, and lighting styles and lighting setups.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite interesting automatically, because I often wonder about over here when we're watching things on the BBC, sometimes documentaries and things like that, they blur out photos or they blur out kind of marketing bits and pieces and stuff like that. And I often think about those, you know, the big hitting TV shows and all of those pictures that are on in the backgrounds and everything. And do they just say to the cast, can you bring in some family photos or something? But obviously it's a little bit more thought through than that. Yeah,
there definitely is. And there's a lot of work that goes into those. You know, even if you see it for just a blip on the camera or on the screen, there's a lot of work that's gone into those photographs, which I'm slowly learning as I navigate in this world. And a lot of money and time and people power have gone into creating those photos. I mean, just the photoshopping alone, I don't do it, thankfully, because I wouldn't have the patience for it. But I mean, I did one recently. I don't know if the show The Boys is in the UK there or how popular it is, but it's a very popular show here in North America, and they shoot here in Toronto, and they had me in for a couple days doing these types of shoots. And some of the shots we were doing were inserting some of their superheroes into red carpet scenes from all over from tens upon tens of years worth of photos. And it's just a day-long shoot of trying to recreate the lighting, shooting with an art director over your shoulder, kind of directing the whole thing. And then they're taking all those photos. They're buying stock photography of real red carpet photos of real actors from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And then they're photoshopping in the photos we've done into those red carpet photos to make it seem like those superheroes were there at the time. Wow. And so just, again, the amount of time and money that goes into it is mind-blowing.
Yeah. It sounds, is it quite stressful?
As you start to do them and you kind of get a feel for how it works, for me, it's not. I mean, definitely the first time working on something like that, especially with a show as big as The Boys, for example, I mean, I definitely don't sleep very well the night before. You're trying to go through all the scenarios in your head, and you're trying to plan, but you can't fully plan because you don't really know what's going to happen. And but I will say the best part about it is that, as I said, you have an art director or a production designer with you. You know, we're usually shooting tethered right off the screen. So they're seeing you're getting instant feedback. Yes. So I take a photo, it pops up on the screen, and you hear a big, "Ooh, yeah, that's great," or "No, we need to change that," or "We need to change that." So that actually makes my job way easier. And the instant feedback is really something I like a lot, because a lot of times for, say, the unit photography, you'll go and you'll just spend a day on set by yourself. You shoot all day, you come home, you edit, you deliver those photos. And if you miss something or didn't get something, well, you've missed it and you can't go back and do it.
When you were in school, when the teacher said to everybody, what would you like to be when you grow up? Did you say, I want to be a set photographer or unit photographer? Or did your journey to this point in your life take some different turns?
Yeah, absolutely not. Did I say that? I mean, I definitely have had an interest in photography from a pretty young age. Sometime probably, I was actually thinking about it this morning. I think I picked up my first camera right around 10 or 11. And I think it was because I was always interested in art and painting and whatnot, but I never felt I was a good artist to draw, painter or illustrator. So I photographed so I could capture that. And that's kind of what I got into. And then when I really started getting into it in kind of my late high school days and even into university, I think my goal was to be the next, Annie Leibovitz, shooting celebrity portraits. That was something that I just really, really loved. But the TV work or the production work, I truly just fell into it. I was, as I've said before, I was at a dead-end job, early 20s, and a friend of mine who worked on a TV show called me and said, "Hey, we need a photographer tonight. Can you come?" And that started everything. I worked on that. It was like a talk show where they interviewed celebrity guests, and I was on that. From that day forward, I did that for 5 seasons, and that just led to tons of work. And then at the time, I don't think there were a ton of photographers doing work in television at the time, and you're on a short list and your name starts to get passed around within the industry, and before you know it, this is where I'm at.
Well, it says on your about page, you've been shooting This is like a legendary list of names. Film and TV music stars including Amy Winehouse, Adele, Drake, Lady Gaga, Justin Bieber, Taylor Swift, John Legend, Mariah Carey, Usha, Demi Lovato, Bradley Cooper, Michael Bublé, Elton John, Rod Stewart, Lily Singh, Will Ferrell, Martin Short, and Patrick Stewart. It's like, it's almost like a dream come true. I think that for a lot of people who are listening, and I know this by reading the thread in the Facebook group, it is kind of like the dream job for a lot of people. But I suppose the way that you're spinning it is a job. You don't have time to be starstruck, I suppose.
Well, it doesn't feel like a job a lot of the times, and that's what I love about it. I will say, like, I get to show up to all sorts of, every day is different. So I show up one day, I'm in a studio. Other days it's 5 a.m. and I'm in a farm field 3 hours from my home. It's so varied, and you're working with so many different people in so many different situations that it truly doesn't feel like a job. Sometimes you get jobs that, you're kind of in the studio every day. You show up like I just finished something for the BBC actually. And it was one of the most wonderful experiences I had in terms of working with crew members and just the experience. And it was very 9 to 5-ish. And I remember coming in because a lot of times you show up one day every 10 days that they're shooting. Maybe I'm on set for one day out of those 10 days. But this one, I was in there sometimes 2-3 times a week. And I remember telling people this, for the first time in my life, it's starting to feel like a job, but I still loved it. I still love it. And, it's not so much nerves, coming in to shoot them because you're just kind of a fly on the wall in a lot of these situations. Now, sometimes you are in like a studio setup where it's just you and these celebrities or these actors. And I don't want to say nerve wracking because and I hate to sound cliche, but they are just people too at the end of the day. And, sometimes they're a little more friendly and sometimes they're not. And you as a photographer, all of us who shoot people, you have to just adapt to your surroundings and kind of work with what's given to you. So you don't have time to be nervous or starstruck or, you kind of have to get the job done, but it almost never feels like a job, to be honest.
In terms of, you said you mentioned that you started with film, and I would imagine not so much the kind of setup stage pictures, but the kind of TV type stuff. Would you have been using a blimp in those days? I suppose you needed to be using quiet equipment. Yeah,
so that was a big change. So I did shoot film, but pretty quickly we switched over to digital. But when it got time to shoot on sets where you needed to be quiet, I had to invest in a blimp, exactly that. And for those of you who don't know what a blimp is, it's essentially like a big bulky Pelican case that goes over your camera, that kind of your camera nicely fits inside, and you close it up. And at least the blimp I had, you couldn't even see your LCD screen or your screen on the back. You couldn't access your controls. It was literally a focus button and a trigger button, and that's it. So all your settings had to be pre-adjusted, and it just never felt comfortable. And I never felt like I was getting my best work through that. And that actually, good segue here, that's what led me to Fuji, because I was shooting on Canons, 5Ds, typically, and 1Ds and 1DXs, all sorts of Canon cameras, which I loved, and they were great. And I was using these blimps, and I was looking to upgrade my blimp. I wanted to get something where I did have more access to my controls. And when I started looking into them, the prices of these were almost the same as some of these newer mirrorless cameras that were coming out at the time. And at the time, it came down to essentially two different brands, and it was Fuji or Sony. And I made my decision at that time. This was probably 2015, I bought the XT1. That was the first Fuji mirrorless camera I bought. And it was based solely on price and the lens lineup. So that's kind of what started my Fuji path. And for quite a few years, I shot with, when I had to be silent, I would have the Fuji camera on one shoulder. And when I had a moment where I didn't have to be quiet, I would pull out my 5D and shoot some stills with that. And eventually, I upgraded to the XT2 and the XH1. And then now I'm shooting on the XT4 and the X100V. And I've just gone full Fuji at this point, and I kind of haven't looked back.
And what about GFX? Have you thought about that at any point?
Well, I use it quite frequently. I don't know, frequently is maybe a strong word, but I use it every so often. So if we're doing any of those gallery shoots where we're in studio and they want a lot of resolution, I'll ask when we're in talks to do these gallery shoots. I'll say, hey, there's these higher resolution cameras out. They're great for detail and cropping if you want. So, one of the first ones I did during COVID, we were trying to limit the amount of time and how close I was to the actors and whatnot. So I said to them, well, the 100 is a perfect option because we can shoot full length head to toe shots but you also then have the ability to crop in and get a crop into like a head and shoulders if you need to. So I kind of sold them on that. It's not an ideal camera for unit work because I am using electronic shutter. There's a lot of kind of rolling shutter issues, and it's just it hasn't quite got there yet in terms of the sensor readout and rolling shutter issues and banding and things like that. So I'm hoping, but then I don't know if I want to deal with 100 megapixel photos for sometimes I'm coming home with 1,500 photos from a day. So wow. I don't know if I want to edit 100 megapixel photos like that. So
how is in the industry, your fellow photographers that do similar stuff, have they all moved to mirrorless as well? Is there kind of a Sony, Fujifilm, Nikon, Canon, they're all in the mirrorless game now? What's the general take, do you think?
Well, from what I can gather, I mean, I don't have per se a lot of friends in the industry in terms of still photographers. Typically, if one of them is on set, then that means that I'm not. So I don't get a chance to really talk to these people very much. Yeah. But we're all kind of a tight little community on Instagram, and you see what everyone's doing and whatnot. So I think what happened was when the shift started to happen, when mirrorless started to pick up ground, and I'm not going to say I'm some sort of trailblazer, but I think I got on it a little sooner than some others did. And I think everyone eventually started shooting Fuji when the XH1 came out. I think that was the big camera that I was noticing a lot of people were using. And slowly but surely, they've all kind of migrated away from Fuji to Sony. Probably with their A9 series, I think that really is like a unit photographer's tool, if you will, or a great tool for them. But I just stuck with the Fuji, and some of them still use them, not as many. Some people are using Canon as well, but it's pretty mixed. But I will say, as I show up on set, it's kind of funny because there'll always be some sort of first AC or cinematographer or director. Somebody always spots one of my cameras, and the first thing they'll say is, "Oh, you're shooting Sony," and they just assume it. Everybody assumes we all shoot Sony, and then when I say no, it's actually Fuji, they kind of their eyes widen a little bit, and you can sense the shock on them, and then they want to talk all about it, and I love Fuji, and everybody else has their own Fuji cameras. And I mean, I definitely find a lot of these directors and director photographers and cinematographers, their personal cameras are Fuji cameras. And it just ends up becoming a conversation piece. And then, especially when they see the X100V, come out, because that's one of my newer cameras that I bought earlier this year, which I've just fallen in love with. And when I have that around my shoulder and someone spots it, people just all they want to do is talk about it.
Are you using the X100V professionally then on set?
Yeah. Wow. What happened was I was for a while there, I was using the X-T2 and the XH1 simultaneously. And when things got a little slow during the pandemic and I found myself going for walks, and actually, Kevin, you owe me some money, I'd say, because you guys talk about these X100Vs so much that I went out and bought one, and I fell in love with it. And I was just using it really to walk around and take photos and whatnot. But then I started bringing it to set with me and using it because it's a lot smaller and lighter of a camera. So it's like, well, if I'm already shooting with that 23 mil focal length anyways on my other bodies, well, why not lighten my weight and just use the X100 on one shoulder and the XH1 on the other? And that's what I was doing. And that led me to, different sensors and getting different color results. I can't quite match them when I'm editing. So that I was like, well, now I got to buy an XT4. So that led me to the XT4. So now when I show up on set, I typically will use the XT4 as my main camera, and then the X100 kind of as a BTS photo camera. I mean, not solely BTS, but it's just great to quickly pull out. It's very unassuming. And, if you're shooting, say, a director, directing an actor or talking to a camera person, it's not as shocking to them, so they don't seem to notice it as much, and you can get some sneaky little photos with it. So that's kind of now my setup of the XT4 and the X100, and then I have my XH1 in my bag if I need it for a second body, which I had a little accident, a little whoopsie a few months ago on set, and I had my XT4 kind of exploded after it fell off of a tripod, and I had to bust out the XH1 for a few weeks. And it to be honest, it felt great. I mean, I love the way that camera feels in my hand.
How did the pandemic affect your industry, by the way?
So it's interesting. The television work I was doing at the time was kind of scattered and was only making up, I don't know exactly what percentage, but maybe 40% of my income was through television work, and the rest of it was portraits and corporate events and things like that. And then obviously that stopped, and there was like a lot of us, we had quite a few months of just nothing happening. And because of the union here and the safety measures and the deal they struck, but what they worked out was instilling very quick safety measures for all these TV and production sets here, because the industry in Toronto is just growing, nonstop. They're building studios all around me. It is becoming a huge hub for television production and movie production here. So they had to work out some sort of system to make it safe for us to continue working. And so I ended up putting a cold call out to one of the shows that I noticed was one of the first to come back. And I just really, it was literally a cold call. Never met this person before. I saw their name, found their number. I called them. I said, hey, I see that you're coming back to shoot and I want to be on your set. And long story short, they said, okay. And they had me on. And from that point forward, it just didn't stop. I was working constantly. And that was probably, I want to say around July of 2020. And it just didn't stop. It hasn't stopped. It was one production after another, sometimes multiple simultaneous productions happening. So the pandemic hasn't affected me personally too much, at least not now. I mean, early on, a little bit it did. But a lot of colleagues that I have, that I'm friends with, who do shoot a lot of events and things like that, they've been shut right down, and they still haven't fully recovered. So it's kind of it's a strange thing for me, because I've never been busier in my life this past year because of all this production work, and it just keeps coming. And luckily we've been able to work safely, and there's been very few, if any, cases on sets, and it's just been a dream, kind of.
Thanks to Darren Goldstein, who returns next week for part 2 of his chat with our Kev. If you want more Mullins, you'll probably know by now that he picks up his Stetson figuratively every Thursday at 3:30 UK time for his internet radio show as Country Boyo on incapablestaircase.com. Be sure to join Kev and his Stetson and his love of country music every single Thursday. And then on Friday, I have my own podcast, which is a walk and talk one, really, a photo walk where your letters of inspiration drive the show, and we take in the sights of wherever we are through our cameras together. We also have guests, some of whom will walk in the future with us. Last week on the show, British portrait photographer Rankin. This week, a different tone. I think it's going to be one of those episodes where you think, hang about, Neil, I might be able to do something just like this. It's been a sort of a pipe dream, but here's a photographer who's actually done or doing it. So I talked with Hugo Hueta Marin about this amazing book called Portrait of an Artist, where, well, basically, he emailed those, the most incredible women artists that he's been inspired by or admired for his entire life around the world, and said, any chance I could interview you for an exhibition and then maybe a book? And people like Yoko Ono, Annie Lennox and Uma Thurman said, well, okay, yes, Hugo. Great, he said. I'm going to bring a Polaroid camera too, because that's how I want my photography to work in the book. Fabulous story. You'll love it. And I'll also be chatting with Dave Williams, who bought himself a Mercedes Sprinter, fitted it out as his mobile camper and photography explorer. And as this episode is going out, at real time, he'll be on a ferry right now on his way to start a 9-month adventure. He teaches us how to become a travel writer and photographer under the guise, if he can do it, well, etc., etc. That's what's happening on Friday's Photo Walk edition of Photography Daily, wherever you get your podcasts. Right, back to your questions. Kev, go for Facebook. Have you finished editing that wedding yet?
No, I'm up to drinks reception. I can never say. Can you say drinks reception?
Drinks reception. You're worse than the people that are at the drinks reception.
I can never say it. Drinks reception. Say it really quickly.
Have you noticed, by the way, since weddings have started up again, the drinks reception, a lot more people, a lot more drink at the drinks reception. I've noticed a lot more misbehaviour at weddings.
The weddings have been great, even the Monday ones and everything. They've been a lot of people getting on it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Go on, say drinks reception 5 times.
Drinks reception, 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 drink. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be a smart Alec, but I think you've obviously got something There's
Drinks reception. Drinks reception.
You've done it again.
I can't say it. I literally cannot say it.
Drinks reception. Cut it
Drinks reception.
No, cut it into 2 parts, Kev. Start with drinks, then add reception on.
Drinks reception. I can do that, but then I sound like a drone. Drinks reception.
No, you've done Okay. Oh, dear. Drinks reception. Are you going to the drinks reception?
I just cannot say it. Oh, I'm not going to say it anymore. I'm just going to call it.
When you have your little Zooms with people, I hope you never say, well, that's a drinks reception.
Yeah, no. I'm just going to call it cocktails from now on, like the Americans do.
Yeah, that's the cocktail
Even though
hour.
there's never cocktails in UK ones.
That's true, yeah.
Very rarely, anyway.
Drinks reception. Anyway, where were we?
I can't remember. Were we doing a question? I was doing a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
Anybody want to drink the drinks reception? Thank you very much.
Right, so Graham Harries says, love them or hate them, you can't get away from drones in the world of photography these days.
Yes.
What are your thoughts and experiences on the eye in the sky?
Love them. Actually, I am a big proponent of drones, though I don't fly one. I did get my my proper license, so this is going back a few years. And before all that nonsense happened, I say nonsense, it was very serious. All that stuff happened around the airports, in particular Gatwick, wasn't it, where they had a real scare for quite a while. It closed the airport down, didn't it, for a number of days on and off.
And they still never found out what was going on, did they?
I don't think they did, no. So I did my due diligence, and I did my proper course, and I took my little exam and all that stuff. But it cost an absolute arm and a leg to put quite a small drone in the air. And there's the return on investment, if we want to use a nice corporate expression, I didn't really see it, Kev. In the end, reluctantly, I let the whole thing lapse, and I've never really gone back to it. I do own a drone. There's one out in the shed still, but it hasn't flown now for about 18 months.
Yeah, I also have a drone, and I pay my CAA license every year to register it, which I think you have to legally.
You have to now, yeah.
But yeah, I haven't flown it in the UK for a very, very long time. I take it to Spain and I fling it around the Campo at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I love all that. But yeah, I don't really use it here. And I have to say, I do get a little bit annoyed with them at weddings. Depends on how they're being operated. I've only seen it a couple of times, I have to say, drones at weddings, because obviously not many of the drone operators do have those licenses and insurance.
Well, there's a difference in the licenses. Yes, it's worth pointing that license out though, Kev. The license that you've got allows you to fly it for pleasure. It does not allow you to fly it for any form of monetary return, does it?
No, correct. Yeah, absolutely. You've got to, if you want to fly it next to a £6 million stately home, you need to be fully trained, fully accredited, and fully insured. And
the last insurance I had, Kev, was around about £750, and that's going back a few years.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why there's not many of them doing it or not doing it legally. They're probably that's probably a bad thing to say. Some of them will be, but I'm sure there's some that aren't. Anyway, the ones that I remember from a couple of years back, drones flying over and everything. It just made everybody just kept staring up at the sky. Yeah. During the drinks reception.
The drinks reception.
They just kept staring up at the sky, which was really annoying, I have to say, because they just kept buzzing over the top.
Yeah.
But I did do a wedding a couple of weeks back where they had a drone operator, and he was very good. So he did what he needed to do, and that was it. He didn't. Then they were doing kind of just regular filming, so they were fine, and they kept it high, and there wasn't any kind of issues whatsoever. Yeah, that's my only real kind of thing about it.
There's a 50-meter rule, isn't there, away from people? You can't be above them.
Seems to change all the time.
Well, I can't remember. If it's 50-meter still, I don't know, but you certainly shouldn't overfly people, and you have to be 50 meters away or something like that. That was the rule. I'm trying to remember desperately what the training was, but I'm pretty sure that was what the rule was. And I see every single time I've seen them being operated at weddings, they're never within those safety parameters. They are generally, I think, certainly overflying the properties that they're at. And each time I've asked about licensing, I've stopped asking now because it sounds like I'm just being a busybody. The answer would invariably be, no, just chuck it up in the air, use it quickly and shove it away.
I bought one of the first ones, one of the first DJI things. It was
Phantom.
Like a flipping helicopter, honestly. It was enormous. It came in all these bits. You had to put it together and everything. Yeah. And it we haven't got much room in our house. So we got at the end of our bed, our bedroom is like a box that we keep our pillows in and stuff. And it just sat there for months. And one day, I never flew it once. One day, Gemma sat up in bed. She said, either the helicopter goes or I go. So I sold it to John Bakey.
Gemma, the helicopter.
yeah. Gemma and John have been very happy ever since.
Did he fly it?
No, he never flew it either. I don't know what he did with it in the end. It was so huge and it was noisy, and you didn't even have a camera in those days. You had to stick a GoPro at the bottom of it.
You strapped it to the underneath, didn't you? It was the GoPro,
yeah.
Right, should we look at the book, actually? Should we do Book of the Week? Because we're sort of 7 minutes into this seg now. So Book of the Week, what have we got, Kev?
So the Book of the Week is Jim Marshall, Show Me the Picture. It's a really nice hardback book, comes in a really keen book slip, so you've got a little protector for it.
Is that really the book slip that has the hole in the middle?
Yeah. Exactly.
Like it's a lens, isn't it? So.
Yeah, exactly. And it says on the front, images and stories from a photography legend. And the book is put together by Amelia Davis. And so the blurb is Jim Marshall created iconic images of rock and roll stars, jazz greats, and civil rights leaders. He had the power to look into the soul of an individual and to capture the mood of an entire generation. This Dulux career-spanning volume showcases hundreds of photographs, intimate portraits, heady crowd scenes, and haunting street shots evoking the sights and sounds of the 1960s and 70s. Marked up proof sheets offer insight into Marshall's process, while in-depth essays from his contemporaries tell a compelling story about this larger-than-life man. Nearly a decade after his death, Marshall's legacy is the subject of a documentary feature film. This gorgeous collection is a must-have for devoted fans and newcomers alike, a fitting tribute to a true legend. So indeed, there is a film as well that kind of goes together with this. So there was another book called Show Me the Picture, which was the story of Jim Marshall. That was an older kind of version of it. The film is also called Show Me the Picture. I'm looking now. I think you can get it on Amazon Prime. Whether you can get that in the States on the equivalent, I'm not sure. So in the UK, it's an Amazon Prime thing, not on Netflix. Show Me the Picture, Jim Marshall. So the book itself is, essentially, it's right up my street. We were saying earlier the kind of stuff that you'd love to be doing, Kevin. This is it. So there is basically the who's who of everybody is in here. So I'm just randomly flicking. I randomly flicked to page 48. Beautiful, incredible black and white picture of John Coltrane kind of sat there with his instrument on his lap, just kind of contemplating, probably in between shows or something. And then what I really love as well is the contact sheets. So and interestingly, when you look at the contact sheets, you've got quite a lot of they're marked up so that he's doing his selections or the editor is doing the selections and everything like that. But you'll see in the contact sheets images that are overexposed, underexposed, badly composed in terms of the crop, half of it's missing, stuff like that. So, reality is that, everybody is normal at the end of the day. But the stories are, the stories also, there's quite a lot of essays, which are really, I've read a few of them, not all of them, but they're very interesting. But the most important thing for me is the images.
So Jim wrote the essays. It wasn't a ghostwriter or anything.
Some of them are written, or some of them are his words, but the essays are by other people. So people like Meg Schiffler, Amelia Davis. So there's other people writing the stories in there. But there's this picture here on page 120. Joan Baez. I love Joan Baez. Yeah. Absolutely amazing. When she and Bob Dylan were together. Whew, what a life. Anyway, she's talking to Mick Jagger in this picture, and it says backstage at the San Francisco Civic Auditorium. It's incredible because you just have these real life insights into these megastars. When they're backstage, they're just like normal people, and they're just like, he's having a cigarette, she's having a bit of a laugh. They're probably talking about, somebody else, or they're probably bitching about somebody, or they're talking about a new instrument or whatever. They're just talking like normal people talk. And then, you have this kind of perception that they're just perfect all the time, and it's not true, is it? It's just real life. And he's been with literally everybody, Jim Marshall, in terms of his photography. This is a very iconic picture actually of Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin, and it says, I didn't know where it was, but it's backstage at Winterland, San Francisco, 1968. It's Janis Joplin lying on the tabletop, the makeup table, and Jimi Hendrix with a cine camera filming her, and she's just lying there with having a cigarette, lying down with all of those lights. So Jimi Hendrix utilizing the lights perfectly, and he's got his hat on, and he's got all of his Jimi Hendrix clothes. Yeah, Jerry Garcia on the page opposite, and in this one, which is interesting, you can see Jim Marshall in the background sticking his camera to his eye and with his one eye closed, one eye open. Yeah,
he was a sort of photographer that was able to. There's a difference between those that get access to the pit at the front, and those that get access to the bit at the back that's behind the band, looking out onto the crowd, and that's where Jim Marshall would be, isn't it?
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's exactly the stuff that interests me. The crowd stuff, the pit stuff. Yeah, of course. I mean, you get some amazing pictures from there. But yeah, it's the stories, isn't it? And it's like Jim Marshall and Anton Corbijn. The stuff they get because of not so much who they know, but because they're accepted. They're accepted into the circle.
Jim Marshall looked a bit rock and roll himself, didn't he? Really,
he did. Yeah, he looked very, very well. I would say he looked very country.
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of that.
The Allman Brothers, great picture there of the Allman Brothers sat on the outside with all of the cases of their tour, and they're just kind of chatting and sitting on the boxes. Drum boxes and things. Amazing. Great picture because somebody's cracked a joke and they're literally all bursting with laughter. So some of the essays are about, they're kind of like, they talk about Jim Marshall as a visual poet. Yeah. So it's really cool.
And not to be confused with the Jim Marshall, who was the father of loud, as they say, the guy who was behind Marshall amps. But there are two Jim Marshalls in music.
I didn't know his name was Jim as well. Yes, definitely not him.
James, I think, wasn't it? But Jim Marshall.
There's a lot of people holding the middle finger up to him, so
yeah.
he obviously had no problems in getting in people's faces.
No, yeah.
Look at that, Chris Christopherson. Picture of Jim Marshall and Chris Christopherson with their arms around each other. A couple of cameras slung around his neck.
There's quite a lot of stone stuff in there as well, isn't there?
Load of stones. This picture of Chris Christopherson, the light, this black and white, the light.
Is that the picture where he's sitting on the bed with the fag in his mouth and the light's just illuminating him from one side, the rest of the room falls off into darkness, and you've got this really intense picture of a bearded musician with a fag with a sort of an element of smoke around his face.
That's the picture.
Beautiful picture. Yeah.
It's mostly black and white. There's a handful of color stuff in there. Some of the Miles Davis stuff is color. It's just wonderful. And actually, in terms of the book itself, the way that it's designed is very clever as well. So it moves from kind of static images and some text. The orientation of the pages changes. The way the titles are laid out is interesting. It's visually designed very well as well. The book, I should say, really, really cool. Really, really cool.
Available quite widely still.
Yeah, available everywhere at the moment because it's part of this. It's to go with the film, isn't it? So you'll find it everywhere. Show me the picture, Jim Marshall. The pictures of Jim Marshall.
We shall link to it, of course, in the show notes.
We shall, and it's not expensive. No. As far as for a book of this quality, production quality, and everything. I'm trying to put it back into the slip. I think it's around about £30.
That's not bad at all.
It says on the back RRP £40, but £30 you can get it for.
We will link, as I say, in the show notes today. Right, back to questions. Craig Wilson. How do, fellas? I've got a quick question for you. It's a QQ, Kev. I'm still shooting with the XT2 when I do my landscape photos and the X100V for everything else, but I'm thinking of upgrading the XT2, as there's one thing that still annoys me: the 2-second timer resetting every single time it goes into standby. What I like is when I've put the 2-second timer on, I'd like it to stay on. And I'm wondering, does the XT3 or 4 timer stay on when activated, even if I turn the camera on and off again? Love the show. Thank you for your advice in advance. Craig Wilson.
Don't know.
I was fearing that, Kev.
I don't know the answer. He's right. It definitely do that with the XT2, but I don't use it, so I don't know if that's still the case. I'm struggling to get this book back in the slip.
Well, you're multitasking today. You are trying to answer that about a timer, which we don't know. I tell you what, we'll pop. That one, if you go into the Facebook group, we'll try and answer that in the Facebook group, because somebody with much longer foreheads, as we say, than us, will know the answer to that.
Carl or Andreas will definitely know the answer to that. Yeah, I would like to think it's not the case any longer, but don't know.
Right. Well, should we have more luck with another one from the Facebook?
Yeah. Okay. Let's try.
We've got more luck.
I'm going to look for one that I can answer. Oh, how did you lose all of your listeners? Well, we stopped answering the questions because we didn't know. Fraser Young says, why is rugby union so boring compared to rugby league? Yeah, well, and actually, I do know the answer to Fraser's question.
Go on then.
Rugby union is far better than rugby league, and that's the end of it.
Why?
No more conversations.
No, why?
Because that's what I play.
Yeah.
Or did play.
But for those that don't understand the difference, now which is the one that has the gents that wear the long overalls that has the no, not long overalls.
Long overalls. You on about Crane Green Bowls?
No, the long coat. No, they were long coats. Well, I can't remember whether they were white or brown, but in rugby they used to wear the long shop floor coats, didn't they? Jackets. And they used to be on the line. They used to be running the line.
Oh, well, yeah, maybe back in 1841.
No, this is only going back into the 70s.
No. I know what you're on about. You're on about the Oxford and Cambridge game, the varsity match that happens at Twickenham every November, or should happen, pandemics aside. And you're right, the linesmen do wear their house jackets. Yeah, because they're from the universities as well.
No,
I'm
talking about the shop steward coats, which has nothing to do with the varsities at all. Which one about rugby league or rugby?
You might even be on about Aussie rules football.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about the English game or the British, not the English game, the British game.
Oh well, then we'll have to strike this down as another one that I have no idea what they're about. I can't speak on this one. I can't answer any of the questions.
Kev, just say drinks reception for me.
Drinks reception.
Okay. But officially, the one that Kev plays is the best game. That's all you.
Yes.
That's all you need to know.
That's all you need to know.
I think you'll be able to answer this one. Barnabas Hammerlick, he says, "Hello guys. First of all, thanks for the great show. I really appreciate the time, the positive energy, and the heaps of humour you put into your podcast. Even if Kev can't answer the questions." I'm a keen listener, and I found this podcast just a couple of months ago. There is one question that I want to ask and hear your opinion about. It's the evergreen question about travel lenses. And I think you've had a similar question asked before, but I'm not asking which lens to buy. I'm rather interested in what you think about a fast and lightweight prime lens being your only travel lens. In one of the previous episodes, there was somebody who travelled with the Fujifilm X100F. Could have been the V. I'm sorry, can't quite remember. But I was wondering if this is doable for me at least, because travel photography is really a mix of all genres. It's landscape, it's nature, it's hiking, it's trekking, it's walking in nature, close-ups of flowers, photos of animals, it's street, it's food, it's architecture, and it's a city. My question is a 35mm prime lens sufficient to cover all this really? So I'm assuming that he means the 23, and if he's talking X100, he's going to be talking 23, isn't he? 35 equivalent. Yeah. Is it doable for everything that he wants? I mean, could he use it for all those street scenes, the documentary, the nature, the close-ups, or do you think really you do need an interchangeable? What do you think, Kev?
No, you can do a 23mm. If you've only got one lens, then you'll use it for whatever you need it for.
Well, would Jim Marshall have been able to use an X100V or F or X100? Would he have been able to use that focal length for that entire book, Kev?
Yeah.
Looking at the pictures I'm seeing here, yes, he could have, couldn't he?
Yeah, he would have been a Leica. Looking at the pictures, they're Leica cameras. I can't see what kind of lenses, but yeah, I would imagine he's probably got a Leica. He's probably shooting everything with 28mm. Looking at these pictures, something like that. It's got quite a wide scene wherever he goes, isn't he? Yeah, that's a really good point. Looking at those pictures, they have a cohesion about them because of the equipment he's using.
And of course, if you've got the X100V, Barnabas, then you can do a little bit of zoom on there, can't you? Some electronic zoom. Of which, by the way, Kev, my electronic zoom stopped working.
You probably switched it off.
Well, I thought I went through the menu and switched it back on again, because that's to do with the control ring, isn't it? In the menu, isn't it?
Yeah. Shooting RAW?
I am shooting RAW, yeah.
That's it then.
Because I was shooting JPEG most of the time with the X100V, and I recently swapped to RAW. Is that the reason you can't use that when you're shooting RAW?
I think so, yeah.
Oh,
problem might be wrong
solved.
Again, but that was definitely the case with the X100F. But yeah, I think that's probably the answer.
Tick that one off the list. We've got it sorted. But two answers there: one for Barnabas, one for me. Say drinks reception.
Drinks reception.
Oh, you did it! You did it!
God damn it! I'm buying the Jim Marshall film as we speak.
Right,
£3.49.
Oh, is it? Is that on?
And it's in 4K on Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime. Wow, there we go.
I got my big 65-inch screen. I'm going to watch that on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever go home?
Weddings can wait.
Yeah, that's it. That's what you're doing for the rest of today.
Yeah.
So, okay, we got time for one more unanswerable question from the Mullins. Can you delve into the Facebook group and find one there? This is... we've used a lot of questions over the last couple of weeks. We had one week where we rattled questions off. So please do keep sending them in to the Facebook group or indeed to click at FujiCast.co.uk. But Kev gets the one in Facebook. He gets the ones and reads the ones in Facebook.
Do you know what my 4-digit Amazon Prime Video PIN is?
No.
It's been a very long time since I've given Amazon money for films. And now it's asking me for a PIN.
You're going to have to do retouching instead, Kev.
Right. Just give me... I want to give you £3.49. Don't make it difficult for me to give you £3.49. Now I can't give it to you because I have no idea what the thing you're on about.
Surely it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, isn't it, Kev?
It might be. I'm going to try that. Let's see. No, that didn't work.
Thank heavens for that.
Yeah. Oh God, it's probably my mother's maiden name. Right. Okay. Questions. We're running out. Honestly, people, come on back to the Facebook group. Start giving us some questions. Jamie Gonzalez. Hi guys. I'm having some issues with photos provided by my daughter's wedding photographer. Backstory: photos, JPEG files were delivered 3 months after the wedding, and only after the venue hired the photographer, threatened legal action. She was shooting a Nikon D810 and native glass, so I know the photos should be awesome. She dumped the photos to a folder, but they all have this reddish tone and are speckled. The few black and white photos are crisp. I think she applied a batch edit and sent them out. Question: using Lightroom and Photoshop, what would be the correct flow to fix, smooth, color adjust, etc.? And there is a picture. He has put one of the pictures up there. Actually, very nice group shot. But yeah, I mean, it's very red. Looks like they're stood in front of a burning lava fire. Right. You could try if they're JPEGs, then get your white balance tool. Where they're stood, I would suggest white balancing against the wooden. Not sure we'll be able to put this photo on the page, by the way, but if you're in the Facebook group, you'll be able to see it. White balance against the wooden planks, I would say, that they're stood on, and see what you're doing. The great thing about Lightroom is that you can get your white balance wand up and move it around, and you can see the preview. That might give you a little bit of an option. If you're using the latest versions of Lightroom, you can get quite detailed with the color tools, and you can start pulling back the oranges and the reds. That might give you a bit more. I would white balance, pull back the oranges, and then bring the saturation down a little bit. Yeah.
Are they consistently red all the way through? So do you think one universal change could get you any closer to the real thing, or is it going to have to be an individual one each one?
I would imagine individually. Yeah. There's only one picture on here, but
I
don't think they're unsavable. Put it that way. But yeah, a little bit of work in Lightroom should be okay.
That's a tricky situation. Did he say that the wedding venue had hired the photographer?
Yeah, which is quite common in a lot of holiday resorts, isn't it? It does look like they're in a kind of holiday resort somewhere. Right. So if you go to like Hawaii or whatever, a lot of the hotels, you buy a wedding package, and that includes the photographer. And
they would hire in the wedding photographer. Yeah. Well, on that note, good luck with doing that. Kev, you've got a film to watch. You've got that wedding to finish editing. Make sure you don't give it a reddish tinge and put spots all over it. And you need to practice the word drinks reception.
Drinks reception. God damn it.
Are you doing it on purpose?
No, I'm not. I can't say it. It's ridiculous.
Go on, say it 3 times, Kev.
It's to say I can't say rugby league rubbish. See what happens when I say rugby league rubbish?
Hey, that sounded fine to me. Rugby league rubbish. There's nothing wrong with that. Drinks reception. Oh, anyway, thank you very much for your questions this week. Do send some more in. It sounds like we need them, Kev. So, so if you want to do it through the Facebook group, how do you go about it, Mr. Mullins?
Go to the FujiCast Facebook group, and you can just add it to the thread marked questions for the show. And also, don't forget, we haven't had any Patreon questions for a while. If you are a patron, pop your questions in the Patreon thing, post it, whatever, I'll get an email, and then you get bumped to the front.
Yes. You can, of course, send it the old-fashioned way. It's not so old-fashioned, but click at FujiCast.co.uk is the email address for the show. Thank you to those that are supporting through Patreon. And if you've liked this or any of the week's shows, and if you can, of course, and feel it's relevant, we'd love you to leave a review. We'll be back on Music from Blue Wednesday. We're supporting music from the incredible artlist.io. We'll be back next week for a drinks reception. And we'll see you then. Bye, Kev.
Bye.
Bye.
The FujiCast is an independent Loading Zone production. Email the show with your questions and words of wisdom to click@fujicast.co.uk. Email any complaints and political nonsense to our wives, who will deal with your comments in their own good time and in their own good way.